Oh, great. Please record away. I'm just going to click that I got it. Boop, there we go. Yeah, as a second generation white settler and somebody who grew up in a very suburban and white neighborhood, as I got older, I realized a lot of my learnings were wrong and missing. And I know that I have a lot of learning still to do, but I think it's really important that we continue doing that and that we continue reevaluating what it means to be on this land. I feel incredibly grateful to be able to be here. Yeah, and I mean, Davey, do you want to add anything to that?
I would like to add that as a queer Filipinx settler, one of my learnings is that a land acknowledgement is just words, and those words come to life when we take action. And as a settler, one of the actions that I've been committing to is, as someone who is a leader in the queer and Filipino communities here in BC, that I am taking leadership in order to educate folks about Indigenous sovereignty on these unceded lands. And I think I encourage that we all consider to take an action, and an action can be as simple as educating yourself, or as simple as continuing conversations with other settlers that might not be aware of their positionality that they are in right now. For example, my parents were Filipino immigrants. They had no idea what they were coming into as they came here. However, they're still complicit. So it's great to have an ongoing conversation with my parents and many different generations of Filipino and queer folks here on these lands.
Yeah. Thank you, Davey. Who are we? My name is Kayleigh Sandomirsky. My pronouns are she, her. I am wearing a royal colored silk kimono with a black dress. I have reddish ombre hair and purple lipstick. And I am of Belarusian and English descent.
Hello, my name is Davey Samuel Calderon. I go by he, they pronouns. I identify as a queer Filipino descent man. And that means that I have short black hair, tan skin, and I'm wearing a purple button-up shirt with palm trees on it. And I'm so thrilled to be here.
You match my like background here, which is kind of like a cactus theme, kind of in the desert. So we're just trying to bring in the heat, right?
Oh yeah. I'm bringing in my ancestral tropics into the space.
Yes, thank you for bringing those here.
Oh yeah, anytime.
Myself, I am a I wear many hats in the community. I'm a production and stage manager, a curator. Actually, me and Davey curated for Up in the Air, the Revolver Festival, for many years. I'm also a producer and a performer.
A great singer.
No one knew that. Do not listen to that. The rest of the things you should listen to him say, not that. A little bit maybe just about your artistic practice in general, Davey, or your artistic side of your identity.
Yeah, so my primary role right now is being a dramaturg. So a dramaturg is someone who helps playwrights and theater creators who are making new work right now try to find a pathway of getting that idea onto a page, and then hopefully, ideally, from a page to a stage. So, and we wear many hats for that. We do mentorship, producing mentorship for folks. We do research for their plays. We have discussions about process design for workshops. So that's my main gig, especially working with Playwrights Theater Center as their dramaturg public engagement, in which I work with playwrights to connect with the public early in their development, because that's important. And we'll talk more about that in this talk. I also am a writer, playwright myself, theater creator, sometimes a performer somehow, and I'm a drag artist. So if you need a drag artist,
Aunt DD,
at
Aunt
DD, yeah, I will take your gig. No, I'm kidding.
You can
No,
hire
no.
him. Hire him. That's a little bit about us. And just another fun question. What is your current obsession?
Yeah, that was such a great question when I saw that. My current obsession is oh God, I'm obsessed right now watching live streams of people doing like horror games.
Like an escape room?
There's this genre that I didn't know was a subgenre of horror games, which is called crafting horror games. And the whole point of it is that you have to craft certain things in order to defend yourself against many dark forces, depending what the game is.
Is it like D&D?
No, it's like a video game. So I watch video game live streamers play the game and comment on it as they play it, and I watch it religiously. I don't know why right now. It's just my thing. I guess because spooky season was just around.
Yeah, it was Halloween. That's
Yeah.
not that crazy.
It's not, but I do find myself like waking up and watching the recordings of the live stream as I brush my teeth, and I watch it going to bed. So my poor partner has to deal with that.
Yeah, just scare yourself a little bit before you go to sleep. Yeah, that sounds totally normal. Totally normal.
Great 8 hours.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
We won't get into my current obsessions because those are weirder. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on how I got to this topic, or how I got to bringing Davey on board. So I saw actually a showing of Davey's new musical, Deep Fried, Pinoy Musical.
Pinoy Musical, yeah.
Perfect. And, you know, other than it being wonderful, because it is, I also realized just the people that were in the room and the community that a piece like this brought out. And I've been speaking with a lot of friends of mine in the arts community, and, you know, the discussion is always around how do we engage our community after these 2 years of, you know, being so apart, and how do we engage our communities that maybe don't come to the arts in general on a regular basis. A lot of people have been diving kind of deep into their, you know, where they come from and what culture means to them and their heritage. And, you know, for myself too, as somebody who has lost a lot of that, because my grandparents just, you know, didn't want any of that to be passed on. I realized that there are so many incredible and beautiful stories like the one that we're going to hear from a little bit later today. And I think they're so important to be coming to life now. When we've had these moments of being apart, I think that we need to connect, and we need to connect on a deeper level. And I mean, this conversation is about that. It's also about, you know, how community influences your work as a dramaturgical tool. But also, you know, I think it enriches a piece a lot when you bring a community into the work. And so that's kind of how I approached Davey, was after seeing this work and being really struck by what this work meant to the group of people in the room and the groups of people that it's going to be shown for in the future.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, how much did your community and community in general get woven into the piece. Obviously, we're going to show you a little clip in a bit. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll give some history about my connection to community work and play and theater development. So
Yeah.
I came out of school with thinking I was like, I'm going to be an actor. And that's it. But then I realized that I really loved creating new work. I love collaborating with people to create new work. That's why I do theater. And so I kind of went on a journey of co-creating some pieces together with people through a process called devised theater. And and I attribute, in a way, we're both alumni of SFU Theater, Simon Fraser University. And in a way, that is our first community. We were a community of artists and school colleagues that had a very specific training.
Yeah.
And we connected and collaborated together, right? And to create new work. But it didn't really sink in for me about how valuable community process is in theater creating and playwriting until I was actually brought on to do community coordination for a show called The Ridiculous Darkness that was produced by Alley Theater. So I coordinated for them 8 community partners.
Wow.
So that was a children's choir, to a cohort of brass bands across Vancouver, a family of taiko drummers, downtown east side vendors, powwow dancers, and the list goes on. And it was a lot of different communities coming together for the show. And as I was coordinating everyone to do workshops and get them to rehearsal and to even do some auxiliary performances, like the taiko family did a concert that
cool.
I produced, and it was fun because it was their
taiko
anniversary. So they invited 2 other taiko groups that have been institutions here in Vancouver.
Yeah, they play at Powell Street Festival.
Yeah, exactly. Powell Street Festival, but like it was their big anniversary concert, and I had the privilege of producing that for them. And amazing. It was stunning. And so it was more than just the show Ridiculous Darkness. It became, for me, this connecting of different communities together. And it in my opinion drove the show. And I was so enthralled by the amount of value people were bringing into it from their life experiences, from where they are as a community. And I kind of got hooked after that. And then I started to work on other shows that were coordinating different groups and communities. Yeah. And then I was thinking about my own work, and I was thinking specifically about my intersection of being queer and of Filipino descent. And I was like, I realized for both of those communities, to be on stage fully is to be represented is one thing. Especially for Filipino folks, it was not a thing that existed. No, not only on like Coast Salish stages here, but like throughout, so-called Canada, right? And also even for queer content, it was just like not on media or stages as much. No, it's been not like it is now. Not like it is now, yeah. And it's how it blows my mind how it's really just a difference of 7 years.
Yeah, I think about when we went to university and the difference in not even art making, but just the way I approach art, or the way I think about art, the way other artists I now approach it. It's so different. And we graduated a little while ago. Only a little bit. Just a little. I am so young. Sorry, but yeah, it's I think it's interesting to see how those communities have changed. And now you're bringing in these new communities that maybe you didn't bring in as much before, even though they were a part of you.
yeah, it was a shifting of values
Yeah.
for me. It was an understanding that there was a lot of artistic energy and potential by collaborating with my community members. And also one thing I was realizing as I was doing a lot of community coordination work for play development and theater, the community members were brought in late. And so there was this very like forward facing, like, oh, we really integrated them into the process. And in the reality, it should have began at the beginning. And I decided when I was thinking about Deep Fried, because Deep Fried, a Pinoy Musical, is about queer Filipinx youth. It's about Filipinx public spaces that are disappearing here in Vancouver. It's about a search for community together. And sometimes that happens in unexpected spaces.
Yeah.
So as it already had been a story in my head before I started connecting people with it.
Yeah.
And I realized that in order to, and I think it's more than the word authentic, like authentically.
Yeah.
It was more for me, how do I truly represent
yeah,
like, and the complexities of that representation,
yes,
that community into the story that I wanted to create. So it was on me to, when I applied for the grant, to reach out to 6 different queer and Filipinx community groups that were leaders in the community, that has also been like establishers of arts and culture for that community, for the community here in BC, and for us to come together, and this, my story that I had, obviously I have artistic collaborators as well, are there to kind of integrate it with what is truly the community's needs now, or concerns or values now.
Yeah.
And how does that also reflect in the story? And I think some people might think, well, doesn't that compromise your artistic direction or value? And I don't think it does. I think it actually, like, it creates even more complex layers by having an ongoing dialogue with community members in every phase of the work.
Yeah, and I think, all of your collaborators come from very different backgrounds and communities. Exactly. I mean, very similar ones, but also very different. And I think that bringing them all into the process only enriches the piece even more. I'm working on a piece right now as well that's kind of talking about generational experiences that are similar through immigration. And it's so crazy to see these parallels that people have experienced. And I think, even watching Deep Fried, I was like, it brought me back to being in the Ukrainian hall making pierogies with some of the babas and learning about what it means to be, Belarusian and Ukrainian. And I think it's bringing all these people together in a space, bringing your community into the work. Like, it's only enriching a piece.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I think we feel connection and humanity with other people and their stories, even though it's not at all comparable to our personal histories.
Yeah.
Because when a piece becomes as specific as possible, with, like, they're not trying to make this, oh, we are all human and blah, 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 right?
No.
Like, it's about being specific as possible with what the intention of the piece is, what the narrative is coming from, what the cultural, what the social, what are the political codes it's bringing up.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I think about community valued theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, maybe we can show a little clip of Davey's new musical. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? And then maybe, Andrew, we can bring that up.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so Deep Fried, a Pinoy Musical, like I said, is centered around queer Filipinx youth, but also there's other representations of rights for racialized service workers, community public space for Filipinx people. It's also about intergeneration Filipino family and history. And so how it all culminates together is it's centered around a queer, non-binary Filipinx fried chicken cook in a fried chicken restaurant set in the Joyce and Collingwood area.
There's a lot of good food in that area.
Yeah, there
is. A lot of good food.
And it's also like a meeting place of both Filipino and Chinese community for the past decades. And they want to be this character wants to be a music star, just like their idol, this other biracial Filipino Canadian person named Q. And the show starts when they inadvertently meet together, and then their lives change in so many different ways because of them meeting. And it's just like a good basis story, just as an excuse to talk about all the things I talked about before.
Yeah.
And so what you'll see in the clip is that it's going to be a little bit of a scene into a song called Sizzle. The context is that this fried chicken worker, Tony, and their best friends and co-workers, Ben and Sol, are working the dinner rush at the fried chicken restaurant. And it is chaotic and it is busy, but they are doing their best. So it's being performed by
it's a list.
It's a list, and it'll be in the chat as well. Kim Mortal, Jolene Bernardino, Argel Monte de Ramos, Sarah Cantuba, Jeremiah Mary Carag, and it's directed by Angela McBantay, and the lyrics were written by myself, Kim Mortal, Peter Abando, and C.E. Gachelian.
Great. If we can show that clip, Andrew, that would be great. Amazing.
Welcome to Crux's Chicken. How can I help you?
I don't think your friend heard me. I wanted
the praise bucket, half breasts and legs, all dark meat, no spicy, with 2 large Cokes and a side of biscuits. Is that correct?
Wow. That's it.
Perfect. That's $32.50 including tax.
Tony notices Sol tapping the biscuit basket on the counter. They like the sound.
Ben, what's the status on the Halo Crunch chicken sandwich with large fries?
Sizzle, sizzle.
Give me 2.
Hear that, George? We'll get you going in 2.
Do it again.
Thanks. Loaded in here.
DoorDash guy slides his delivery bag on the counter. Tony grabs some of the ready orders. They notice the crinkling of the brown paper. They like it. They also like the sizzle in the background.
Who's next?
Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again.
A bunch of people raise their hands. It's a huge line.
Whoa, hold that. It's saying there's 5 more orders.
Soli, Ben, and Tony sigh. That's the nature of the early dinner rush.
Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Day in, day out.
Up on our feet, sweat on our necks.
Feeling the heat.
And what's that smell?
The whiff of hot oil.
That sputtering, bubbling, gold liquid that boils. Strain the fries, drop the basket. Don't mind the yelling, the noise is the racket.
Assemble the boxes, make it look neat.
Back-breaking work for a piece of me.
Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do
Hey,
it
we up
again.
to Berkey fries?
Welcome to Crux's. How are you? Unknown ghost of mopo, each customer new.
Extra napkins for Tita, cook for Ate Karina.
Go pay for the students, pulling all-nighters, no sleepers.
A bucket for $12, a working class dinner.
Say a prayer for strength to endure the labor.
Hide the plastic straws from the freaking vegans. Eating this chicken don't make you a sinner.
So it's bad for your heart, but that taste you can't fall us cause it's something you crave.
Yes, it's pleasure and purpose. Sizzle, sizzle, do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, sizzle, we working again. Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again.
That shuffle of regulars, they roll up the street.
Long day at work, they need a treat. The crackle of crispy fried chicken skin. Roasting, boiling, cooking, just listen.
As my tail beeps and orders pile sky high, I hear my talk, my hull coat that sacrifice. Work hard over here, my halong buhay. Work hard over here, even when I don't wanna try. In the end, I serve them from my station, and their satisfaction, that's my inspiration. My kababayan bahay ko, my home. They make me shine brighter than me alone.
When we're home, being at home, we're untouchable. Ang sarap naman, finger licking good.
We know what we feed our roots, the truth. Colonizers did not think us capable, forsooth. Fried chicken is truth. Fried chicken is truth.
Sizzle, sizzle, do it again.
Yeah, sizzle good for you, girl.
Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again.
Your ass over to Crux's. Yeah, tonight.
Sizzle, 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 do it again.
Because it just feels right. Fried chicken is truth.
Yay.
Oh, shut up.
Sizzle, sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, and we do it again. Sizzle, 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 do it again. Sizzle, and we do it again. And we do it again. And we do it again.
What the heck is going on here?
Okay, Davey here. Welcome back. So what you just
Thank you so much, Andrew, for pulling that up. So yeah, that's a little clip from the piece, one of the songs. Very catchy. As a restaurant worker, a little bit triggered.
sorry.
Busyness. I'm
Bit of a
like,
content
oh
warning.
my God. Yeah, right. So yeah, looking at that and kind of getting back into what we were talking about, I wonder how then, you were talking about the journey of the piece and how community has influenced your work. And I wonder now, as a dramaturg, as somebody who works for a company that specializes in dramaturgy, PTC, which you saw actually in the background of that presentation as well. How does community act as a dramaturg for your work, or how can it act as a dramaturg? And is it important, do you think, or maybe you don't even know, I don't know, if bringing in a dramaturg and the community is something that you would encourage? Do you, like, what does both of those bring to the piece itself?
Yeah, I think here's the thing. I think that it's dependent on what the narrative or the story or the piece is that's bringing in. Obviously, if you are someone who's writing a show that's a man is on an island alone, maybe you don't need community, or maybe a dramaturg for sure.
I mean, what do you mean? There's a lot of other alone men that you could probably find to bring in.
There's many.
There's many.
Let's be honest.
There's many.
But I think it's about really thinking about what is the core of the show that you're creating, right? Like and if the core of that show has a representation that reflects a larger world, and specifically a world that's connected to specific culture and identity and like social construct, then community and a dramaturg is actually something you should consider together.
Would you say though, then bringing in a dramaturg, from the community is like golden egg? Or do you actually think that bringing somebody outside so you have kind of more perspectives?
I mean, here's the thing as well, right? A lot of, especially for shows that are being created that represents equity, deserving communities, ones that have been oppressed in the system for millennia. The system has prevented the training of very specific people, especially not only dramaturgs, playwrights, directors, writers themselves, that sometimes that if you were trying to get a dramaturg that's specifically an intersection of, like, for example, my show has queer and Filipinx representation, to have a dramaturg that's also queer and Filipinx. I'm lucky I got one.
That you yourself check those. You can't dramaturg your own show.
Chris Gachelian is one of the dramaturgs on the show.
Yes.
He's queer, he's Filipinx, and so I have the privilege of being able to have someone like that on the team, right? But that's not always the case.
No, it's often not the case, actually.
Exactly. And I think it's less about trying to pressure to try to have the perfect people in the room to make the work. I think it's more so about the making sure that everyone creates the care, creates the process of protocols, of agreements with community collaborators, the artists themselves, the writer, the dramaturg, to make sure that those values, that those boundaries, those agreements are honored as something's being like developed. And I think it's more so about that. And because of that, I think the benefits of having community in that process, especially if your show is representing those specific communities, is that they bring their perspectives, but they are one of many multifaceted perspectives in the world, but they bring them in. And that's the important part, is that you as an artist are not creating in a vacuum of assumption of the communities or characters who has particular identities as you're creating, right? In a way, it's like you're doing the research. Like in playwriting, we don't talk about research. We actually do a lot of research.
We don't. Well, and it's funny, a lot of like granting bodies are for research, and it takes 3 years to put on a show sometimes. Like the research takes time. It does. And then part of that research is living beings, or the media of living beings reporting about their identity and culture, right? Did you get feedback from the audience that experienced your presentation?
So to give some context, the clip you saw was the first development phase last year. That's us just getting a kick at the can, and the community collaborators all just we're figuring each other out. We're trying to figure out what the protocols are, what our agreements are. And so that was that. And then the one that Kayleigh saw recently was at the Shadbolts for a residency in which we were able to develop more music, more scenes. And then again, that one was a bit more faster. The community representatives couldn't be as represented all the time, but we constantly had what I called an open door policy, where we had especially Filipinx emerging artists come in just to witness.
Oh, great.
So just to be there. They were open to express their opinions about things.
I mean, the space just felt so good.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of time, and you have to create that space, right? So we made sure, at least even this last phase, that again, they were also members of those different groups I was talking about, coming in to lend their lend their feedback. But also sometimes I feel like their collaboration didn't need feedback at all. Sometimes it was just witnessing and watching.
Yeah.
And then on the dramaturgical side, like having the pluses of having a dramaturg into that process as well, is a dramaturg is a person that helps the creative team, helps the playwright find the pathway in the development of a show.
Yeah.
Meaning like, oh, have we considered these questions now that's coming up for the show? Have we considered these questions to ask our community? Have we considered what is the way we're integrating community members or even our artistic collaborators into the piece itself? What is the intention of having all these people together, working together on this work? And that's also how I dramaturg. I'm very community minded. I always sit down with a playwright and I go, okay, so like one of the first questions we as a dramaturg we usually ask is like, who's this for?
That's a good question.
Who's this for?
Yeah.
It's okay to also say, it's for myself.
I mean, I think that's like, sometimes that can be better in some ways. I don't know. Sometimes I ask people that too. I'm like, who is this show for? And is it targeting that audience? I've gone to shows where I'm like, this is not reaching the audience you want it to.
Yeah. And there's two things too, is like, who's this for? And the sub questions are, who is this for? And is it truly the people you think it's for?
Yeah. And are they going to come and see it? Like,
are they going to come see it? Or also there's a subgroup that you think is going to easily come see it, and there's a barrier to that, right?
Yes.
So like, is there a way to change the form of the show, the venue of the show, to do that? Like, I think also, I feel like playwrights and theater creators sometimes forgets about how these things are being experienced by audience and community.
Yeah.
And that's something I like to always bring forward quickly as a value. The other dramaturgs at PDC does that as well. And the other sub question of who's this for? Do you think this is who it's actually for? Who is it? And who is not? The other sub one is who's this for? And do you have the capacity to ingrain the values of those communities that you want to make this for?
Yeah.
And that is the thing of being like, maybe we need, if it's not literal leaders and community members like en masse coming into a process, like I don't expect everyone to do that.
No.
But like, do you have a cultural consultant, a community consultant to come into a thing? I
see cultural consultants a lot more on projects.
And like also like not just cultural, but I think of inclusive consultants, inclusivity consultants, accessibility consultants. I also think of like specialty as well as a way to go into a thing. Like, do you have an academic who has an understanding of a very specific topic that's related to your show?
Got you.
Because that specific I'm working with Millie Mumford
Yeah.
over a program called the Associates. It's a 3-year program where a dramaturg and a playwright works together for 3 years, and that at the end, some type of production ready phase is possible for the show.
Is this through PTC
This
as
is
well?
through Playwrights Theater Center, and so their show, It Lives in My Bedroom. We're diving into a lot of horror research.
And that's why you're watching the videos.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, kind of, yeah, sure. But horror research, and also we're also looking into because it's also for those who are survivors
Yes.
of SA or content warning. SA means sexual assault or sexual abuse. And they're looking at a way to use horror as a way that is oftentimes it often exploits queer and femme-identified and gender non-conforming folks all the time. And they're trying to find a way in a very immersive show how to flip that on its head and also create a space where people can be scared but also have themselves cared for in the show, especially if they are someone who identifies with being a survivor or someone who has PTSD. So like obviously we're thinking of like the safety protocols of that and thinking of a counseling consultants and folks, but we're also thinking of like people that horror is their life, and then there's something that they specialize in that,
right,
where they can support our research and how we're integrating that into the show. And that again also leads to they're not community per se, but groups of people that will be supportive of a show like that,
right?
Like horror enthusiasts, you know, like will very much be really interested in that show. And we want to invite those people in and figure out what that invitation is.
Yeah. So I guess like kind of talking a little bit about your relationship with PTC, because I think that group also has, you know, encouraged your artistic practice to grow in a lot of ways. And, you know, I didn't really even know fully what dramaturgy was until I kind of had more experience with PTC. They're you know, such a big influence in the scene here, I feel like, for playwrights, and they've opened a lot of doors too digitally, which is great for people, you know, out in Victoria or in other places throughout BC, for the possibility to work with people like you know, that have this knowledge, that ask these questions, that drive these pieces forward. I think a lot of times, you know, artists are like, I have an idea, or I have a script, or I have a first draft, and I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. And it can feel so lonely, I think, in those initial stages when you're just sort of like, you know, putting pieces together, and having the ability to talk it out with somebody else in a room, I think is like so integral. And then being able to show it like in the way that you've done with these presentations, you know, and as somebody who has seen the progression of this piece, and, you know, I saw it online, I saw it in person, and now I hope to see it on stage. And it's, you know, the way that it grows too, because of this support that you've had through this company and through the community. You know, I've seen it, but what does that mean to you in this piece?
I mean, for me, I'm just trying to like terse out the question.
It's kind of like how has dramaturgy and the community like gotten the show where it is today?
I think how dramaturgy and community has helped the development of Deep Fried, and just in general, any process that I've done that has combined those two things, is it has helped kind of just, I call it the mind meld.
Yeah.
Like
I've heard that. I've heard
yeah,
that.
it's however we get together to collaborate.
Yes.
It is first having these folks, our community members and artistic collaborators, like working together in virtual space, in-person space, makes the writing process not so scary anymore.
And
right?
lonely.
And not lonely anymore. I all of a sudden have, and again, we're in theater. I feel like theater is one of the few art forms that really embraces collaboration. I have complicit collaborators in the space with me to like help work out the big questions I have with this piece. And it's not all like roses.
No,
it's so great to have people also challenge.
Yes.
Like, and that's and make the many different layers of the piece so much fuller.
Yeah.
And I really find in that complexity, it's not about getting the answers, it's about the complexity, the questions that are coming up and that's being imposed into the piece that makes it so juicy. And I think the dramaturg, like Chris for me, or myself for other projects, I always think our main job is to be the person, to be the cheerleader, an advocate for the playwright, again, another collaborator, and probably your best advocate and collaborator, especially for things that maybe you're not, that's not your cup of tea, like public speaking or like
that's not your cup of tea.
Well, I don't know. I did some public speaking competitions growing up.
I coerced him. I brought him in here with wine. I promised him wine, and that's why. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. But they're your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
And also B, they are the person that is also going to be the one who helps create, like I said, the pathway. And what is pathway? I think the pathway is creating a map or a process in which is representative of the playwright and the theater creator's needs and wants with the piece. And also very, very clear in circling around what the intention is.
Nice.
Because I think it's like, also, why are you doing this show? Why is this so important, not only to you, but to the community?
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny
to you, the community and the world to see the show.
Well, and that keeps coming up. And I think sometimes, again, it's like, it can be so lonely. And then you need somebody to almost be like, this is just your brain. And now you bring other people in and suddenly you're picking it apart and you're like, oh, I didn't even see that because I've been alone working on this for so long. I needed like another set of eyes in the room. Yeah.
And we are so, as individuals, we are so biased in a way to our own personal perspective, right? Our own personal worldview. Many factors has gone into that. But a piece of theater, when it gets on that stage, is it's disseminating to many different people.
Yeah.
So if you are so fixed in what you believe and what you think, it's not, in my personal opinion, it's not going into the big questions, or it's very surface level in the intention of that. I feel like by having people like collaborators, by having community members, if that's part of your values for your process, having other collaborators to come in and to support you, and it's all about support. You should not have collaborators around that are trying to trip you up.
That's not helpful. That's not helpful.
You say thank you, but goodbye.
Yeah, that's what the audience is for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but like, but it's those people that allows you to come out of yourself, to consider new possibilities, consider new perspectives.
Yeah.
And that is the complexity I'm really curious and intrigued about when I dive into what I'm writing, or I dive into the work of another playwright as a dramaturg.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're actually out of time.
Oh my God.
So I know I was like, we could do this all night long,
Right.
or just hang out all night with us, and we'll just keep talking. What's next for Deep Fried?
Oh, so what's next for Deep Fried is, I can't go into the details yet, but we're hoping to.
Oh, it's a mystery.
We're hoping to present it in 2025. And we'll always have public invited research, not only for the queer and Filipinx community to come in and to see that the show's developing, but also to the public as well. So make sure that you follow, even though it's kind of defunct, but Kabayan House on Instagram and Facebook, Kabayan House Collective. And I'll send that out to emails to you guys. And dramaturgically, what I'm working on right now is The Frontliners, and that's in production at the Waterfront for a workshop production. A great example of how does a piece start, and from like a couple pages of a draft to getting to a place now that it can be on a stage, and then potentially even develop more further. And that was also very community oriented. We're very conscious of the newcomer community in that show, The Frontliners.
Yeah.
You can get your tickets now at for the Waterfront here in Vancouver. It's running November 10th to the 13th. And you can get tickets now if you go to Playwrights Theatre Center's website or the Vancouver Fringe Festival's website. It's a special presentation with them.
And I do encourage any new playwrights, to go to PTC, to their page and check out what they're all about. They just provide so many useful tools, and they do offer a lot across the water in terms of like digital help. So just anybody who, isn't in the city of Vancouver, they offer a lot of support. So I really highly recommend checking them out. And I just want to give a huge thank you to Impulse Theater and to Peak Fest for having me back. And thank you to Davey for being here. This was so lovely.
Oh my God, yeah. Just one last thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so for PTC, we are doing actually more online workshops.
Amazing.
So it doesn't matter where you're at. Right now, we have a cohort as part of Block A, which is for emerging playwrights. Half of them are in Toronto.
Oh, amazing.
So very much so, we would love more people to be in the same time zone so they're not exhausted.
Yes,
their
more people
workshop.
From Victoria, come join us.
We have that. You don't even have to pay to be a member. If you just get a supporting membership through us, you'll get our newsletter, which has a list of all the writing opportunities you can have, and also when we have calls for programs.
Yeah.
And here's the last thing is we have office hours virtually now every couple of weeks. And so if you ever want to come in, just have like an hour with one of us, myself, Joanna Garfinkel, or Heidi Taylor, or actually any of the folks that we work with at PTC are dramaturgs by trade.
Yeah.
Melanie Yates. You could not only ask us about our programs, you could also like ask for like questions you have as a playwright that is trying to get their work connected to theater companies or self-producing. We'd be happy to help you, connect you with resources. We're all about proliferating more Canadian theater and plays out in the world. That is our mandate. So please connect with us.
And if you have any questions for myself or for Davey, you can direct them to info@impulse.ca. Please tell me I said that right. I was like, I don't.
It'll be in the chat.
It'll be in the chat. Right, Tiffany? Yeah, so thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight, and for everyone who may be watching this in the future. Thanks again for being here with me.
Thank you. Salamat.
And now we go to turn things off. Doo-doo.